Hello everyone, I'm Aaron, a birding naturalist. Welcome to my channel. What if I told you that the color that you see in a blue feather on a bird isn't made by any blue pigment at all? That's right. When you see a blue feather on a bird, say on an actual bluebird like this western bluebird, or a blue feather on a different kind of bird like this California scrub jay, you see a blue color. It looks like this bird's got blue on it. And it does, sort of. There isn't any pigment in those feathers that actually reflects blue light that is blue inherently. What do I mean by that? Well, for a moment, let's take a different example, a different color. Let's say red. Think of a brilliant, beautiful red feather from a bird. Northern cardinal, one of the classic red birds. That red feather has materials in it that absorb all of the wavelengths of visible light except for red, which it bounces back, which is why you can see red light. When some of those wavelengths of red bounce off the feather of a cardinal and they hit your eye, you perceive red. And if you took a red feather from a cardinal and ground it to a powder, you would have a red powder, because the material in there, one of its properties is that it reflects all the wavelengths of visible light except for red, which is why it appears red to us. So that's classic, normal, kind of what you would expect. Great. Why isn't blue the same way? Well, blue's a weird one. If you take a blue feather from that bluebird or that scrub jay and you grind it up, you get kind of a boring, dusty brown powder. It's not blue. And that's because the reason that it appears blue to us is not because of a particular pigment that reflects blue light. It's rather a specific arrangement of structures inside the feather that reflect blue light. The blue of feather is produced by this interaction of light and this network of structures, of tiny little structures of a protein called keratin. Keratin, incidentally, is the same material, the same protein that we have in our hair and our fingernails and toenails. Same basic protein. In a feather, which is also largely made of keratin, inside the feather, there are these tiny little structures of keratin, tiny little fibers, and in between them, tiny little pockets of air. And as light passes through this complicated lattice of keratin fibers and air pockets, they are arranged in such a way that specific wavelengths of light bounce off, blue wavelengths, and the rest can pass through and are usually absorbed eventually by the skin of the bird or some other structure. And that is why when you look at a blue feather, it looks blue. All the wavelengths of light are passing through this structure except for blue, which bounces back. And that means that if you take that structure and you kind of mess with it, if you remove it from the feather, the structure itself breaks apart, and therefore it doesn't have that arrangement to push, to bounce that blue light off of its surface. That's why when you take a blue feather and grind it up, it turns brown. It loses the specific physical structure to reflect blue light, which means there isn't any blue color. There's nothing in there which, when you take it out of the feather, it still looks blue. There's nothing there. It's just a physical property of the physical makeup of these little fibers of keratin inside of a feather. This is also why, to a certain extent, blues are often kind of iridescent. If you spend time looking at, say, a bluebird, for example, you'll notice that in certain lights and at certain angles, its blue feathers look especially blue. Whereas at other lights and other angles, it's still blue, but it's not as eye-catching. That's because the physical structure kind of has an arrangement to it, and it will reflect blue light more effectively and more dramatically at a particular angle in a particular direction than other angles. And if you happen to be standing at the right angle to catch that especially strong reflection, the bird will look especially blue. And if you change your angle, if you take a few steps to the side, if the bird rotates and turns around, sometimes that really brilliant blueness fades. Unlike a cardinal, which looks red and brilliant and beautiful, and if you take 5 steps to the left, it's still going to look bright red and beautiful. And if the bird turns a quarter of the way around, it's still going to be bright red and beautiful. So it's one of these crazy things about blue feathers. Next time you go out and you see any bird with blue coloration on it, you can realize, hey, that's not actually a pigment. It's this structural phenomenon, unlike pretty much all the other colors. The one exception to that is iridescence. Iridescence actually has a very similar principle involved. And I may talk about that in a different video, especially like hummingbird feathers have this crazy iridescence that almost wipes out completely and goes dark at the wrong angle. Weird stuff. But blue is one of these things. It's a really common color that we see in birds. There are many, many, many species of birds that are blue or that have at least a few blue feathers. And yet none of them have any blue pigment in them. A strange little phenomenon about the natural world around us that I wanted to share with you today. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for the view. Subscribe to the channel, and until next time, enjoy the natural world.